Good morning. Good to see you all here this morning. We are in Judges chapter 19. If you would like to turn there. This is the last, I'll call it, episode in the book of Judges, chapters 19 to 21. And this is, I don't think I need to qualify this, the darkest episode in the Bible. I'd challenge you to think of a darker one. Yeah. Well, there's no description there. It's just everyone was evil in Noah's day. Well, you can be the judge of that. Today, the material that we're covering we're not going to get to the most horrible aspects of this story. This is kind of set up, background. It's the initial part of the account. So today won't be too bad. What we cover next time is pretty grisly. This is the last episode in the book of Judges, and yet it occurs at the very start of the Judges period, just shortly after Joshua and the elders, if you're familiar with the first part of the book, first couple chapters. Let me say one other thing before I go a little bit deeper on the timing of this. If you're familiar with this account, everybody in the account is anonymous. There's one exception. It's Phinehas, the high priest, but everybody else is nameless. Kind of interesting because I'm piggybacking off of some commentators here, but that seems to be intentional. Not that they didn't know the names of these people, but there's a sense in which this seems to represent what's going on in Israel more generally. Not that this exact kind of thing happens all over the place, but these nameless people represent Israel at this point. I'll come back to that in a moment. But first, let me talk just a little bit about the timing of this, because when you initially read in this account, you really don't have any idea where you're at chronologically, okay? It's not until in chapter 20 that we run into this guy named Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron. That's in chapter 20, verses 26 to 28. He's the priest. So, if we go back, we know that Aaron was the brother of Moses, right? So we also have an account of his death, Aaron's death at Mount Hor. It's before they enter the land. It's actually before they cross over and come up the King's Highway through Edom and Moab. So they're actually they're at the end of the wandering in the wilderness when Aaron dies. He has a son, Eleazar. We don't know a ton about him. We don't know when he was born, when he died, but we can estimate, I think, fairly closely, and that's what I've attempted to do here. Eleazar then had a son, Phinehas, and he is probably best known for his action having to do with Baal Peor. It's when the Israelites have come up the King's Highway and are coming to the plains of Moab, where they'll camp and then cross over the Jordan River to attack Jericho. So it's before they do that stuff. The Israelites get involved with Baal Peor, the worship of false gods. God sends a plague, and you probably recall this guy, Phinehas, sees a guy, an Israelite man, bring a foreign woman into his tent, broad daylight. Obviously, they're going to have sexual relations. He walks into the tent with his spear, runs them both through together, and that ends the plague that God is sending on the Israelites. Grisly story. You can go read about that if you'd like to. But that event occurred right before the conquest. I mean, within a year or so. And I've got that up here in yellow. So we know he's an adult, a full-grown man at this point. And it is the same guy that is involved with the Benjamite war here. He actually is ministering at the tabernacle, which is at Bethel at this point, kind of an interesting thing. So it's within his lifetime. So that tells us it's early in the Judges period, right? Do you follow the logic on that? He's an adult before the conquest, and he's still the high priest. So it's got to be fairly early. And I've perhaps a little arbitrarily, see if I can get this to work. I should have done this earlier. There we go. Get my red dot. There we go. So I placed it here, perhaps at the beginning of the judgeship of Othniel. It has to be after the time of the elders, because that's a time when everybody's following God. Well, they haven't. Yeah, that's the way the text puts it. They kept their noses clean, if you will, while Joshua and the elders were still around, that generation. So shortly after that, and I don't think we can move it a whole lot further down before Phinehas would be expected to pass. So that's the rationale for where we place this at the beginning of the Judges period, which in some ways makes it all the worse, because what's described in these 3 chapters is horrible. And you would expect that more at the end of the Judges period than at the beginning. It's quite astounding, sad stuff like that. So Judges chapter 19, now it came about, verse 1, now it came about in those days when there was no king in Israel. And then the narrative is going to continue, but I want to stop there for a moment and talk just a bit about there being no king in Israel. This phrase occurs 4 times in the book of Judges. They're all here at the end. 2 of them we ran into when we talked about the Danites migrating to the north. And then 2 of them, well, they actually bookend the Benjamite war. This is the very first thing we read here. And it's going to be the very last thing at the end of this narrative. So what's the significance of this? Well, you've seen my cover slide. Israel needs a godly king. And I think this really helps to support that idea. Now, don't take that to mean that a human king, or that the narrators thought that a human king was the answer. Because we get again and again, go read Kings or Chronicles, the human kings most commonly end up corrupt. But a godly king will eventually be God himself. That's the solution. And I think they want you to realize that having no king is not the solution either. That's what we've got in the book of Judges. There's no king. And twice, that statement is followed by, everybody did what was right in his own eyes. Oh, well, that should be really good, right? Everybody gets to do what they want.
So that's a deeper statement that it appears.
Yes.
There's no human king, there's no God king.
Yeah, no human king, and they are not following God either. God is not their king. And I think everybody doing what is right in their own eyes. The reason that doesn't work, I'm stating the obvious here, is because we are sinful. That, I mean, to the very core, that is, we are born that way. And sin is the reason we see this evil stuff going on here. Okay. So let's jump into this again. Judges 19, verse 1. Came about in those days, when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite staying in the remote part of the hill country of Ephraim, who took a concubine for himself from Bethlehem in Judah. This map shows you the tribal borders, if you will. So our nameless Levite is in Ephraim, and it says in the remote part of Ephraim. What's that mean? Well, what is the not remote part? The not remote part would be this central ridge route here. That's where traffic goes. You can see the tabernacle at Shiloh is not far off of that, or down at Bethel at this time. The Israelites never really lived out on the plain here. So we're probably talking about this rough country on one side or the other of Ephraim. He takes a concubine from Bethlehem, and we'll run into Jerusalem and Gibeah as we go through this account. Concubine is not a word that we typically use in everyday speech because in America, 21st century, you have a husband or a wife, that's our only status legally. A concubine did not have it's like a secondary level of a wife. Did not have the full privileges of a wife, but it was a sexual union. You're familiar with this if you know the Bible, a common status. And we don't know the situation here. If he had a full-blown legal, full-status wife, and this was a secondary, or if there was some other reason why she was a concubine and not named as a wife here. Later on, she'll be referred to as I don't quite know what word to use, a girl. Na'ar is a youth, a male, and she's a na'ara, a female youth. Sometimes the word means an apprentice to somebody or something like that, but so she seems to be relatively young.
Like a formal mistress?
Mistress, maybe, kinda, yeah. We don't have an equivalent, really.
But she's being unfaithful.
Unless, as I understand it, if you go back in American history far enough, she runs home. If you go back in American history far enough, like a white landowner could not legally marry one of his black slaves, and yet they had marriage relations. That's kind of similar to a concubine. You can't, in that case, you could not go to a courthouse and they would marry you. It's illegal. But it's about the closest I could come from an American perspective from years ago. So she is from Bethlehem, and of course, the tribe of Benjamin lies between those, right here. So he crosses down there, takes this woman. Notice my New American Standard said that he was staying in the remote part of the hill country of Ephraim. That word is often translated as sojourning, a sojourner, somebody that's not a native, grew up here, all of my family's here, whatever, but I want to point that out because we'll come back to that when we meet this other Ephraimite in Gibeah. Okay. Verse 2. His concubine played the harlot against him, and she went away from him to her father's house in Bethlehem in Judah, and was there for a period of 4 months. There's a little bit of question about what that played the harlot word means. You may have a translation that has she was angry or she despised him, or there's some question about which Hebrew root there is the correct one. I don't know that it really matters. She left him and she went home, back to mom and dad. 4 months. I mean, in some ways, that's quite a while. You wouldn't probably want to wait much longer than that to go get her if you're still interested in maintaining the relationship. But obviously, this was not something that could not be reconciled. And he was interested in reconciling, as we'll see here in verse 3, Judges 19:3. Then her husband, after 4 months, arose and went after her to speak tenderly to her in order to bring her back. And he took with him his servant and a pair of donkeys. So she brought him into her father's house, and when the girl's father saw him, he was glad to meet him. So he's interested in reconciliation, whatever the issue is between them. And I don't know, does he give her some time to cool off? I'm not sure what to make of the wait. But he goes down to Bethlehem. This is modern day Bethlehem, the Church of the Nativity. You can see that right there. This is what it looked like in the 1930s. Let's see. So the Church of the Nativity, we know approximately where the Iron Age village was at. Not today, almost this entire photo would be covered with buildings. There's been so much modern construction there, but so this is the region today. He takes with him a pair of donkeys, him and his servant, and her father is glad to see him. I don't know who actually was there, but somebody snapped a picture of their greeting. And through the miracle of modern AI, we can actually colorize that kind of thing. And it's like it happened yesterday, right? Yep. Yep. More than 100-year-old photo. Color came out pretty nice on that. So, verse 4, his father-in-law, the girl's father, detained him, and he stayed there with him 3 days. So they ate and drank and lodged there. You can just kind of assume he must strike the father-in-law as a pretty good guy, and vice versa. The Levite seems to enjoy the time with her father. It doesn't seem like there's conflict between them. It seems like they're trying to mend whatever sort of relational issues there may have been.
Or someone that can solve his problem.
Somebody that can solve his problem. Tell her she's got to stay home with me. The Levite saying that, of course.
Kris, I want to stretch the point, but in this part of the passage it uses the word husband and father-in-law. Does that contradict the previous?
No. So actually, when you read the word husband there, it's just the word man, because there is no Hebrew word for husband. Like in English, husband and man are two different words. In Hebrew, they're the same. It's just based on the context. And so there's not a different word that they could have used. In fact, the word wife in Hebrew is just the female version of man. A man is ish, wife or woman is isha. And just add the feminine ending on it. So they didn't have unique words for either husband or wife.
Odd language.
What an odd language, right? Yeah. Or is it English that's odd? I don't know. You got to pay attention to context, and context is why they call him a husband. And there's not a word even in English for the man who takes a concubine, like the concubiner. It doesn't exist. So they just call him husband. So it's more than. I mean, boyfriend would be. What other word would we use? Boyfriend would be. Domestic partner. I don't think that word had been invented yet when they did the NAS translation here. Wow.
It says in verse 3 that the father-in-law had not met him before.
Right at the end, he was glad to meet him.
As though he had not met him before.
I would not take it that way, Tricia, that he had never met him, but just that when he came, then obviously at some point they meet again. I would say.
Maybe that way.
Welcomed him. I would assume that the father-in-law played a critical role in the origin of the relationship as concubine. Yeah. Nothing. Okay. So, he detained him for 3 days. That's in verse 4. Verse 5, Judges 19:5. It came about on the 4th day that they got up early in the morning, and he prepared to go. And the girl's father said to his son-in-law, sustain yourself with a piece of bread, and afterward you may go. By the way, he's not literally offering him a slice of Wonder Bread. Bread is the generic word for food. So basically, eat while you're here, have a meal, and then you can go. So, yeah, breakfast. Verse 6, so both of them sat down and ate and drank together. And the girl's father said to the man, please be willing to spend the night, and let your heart be merry. Verse 7, then the man rose to go, but his father-in-law urged him, so that he spent the night with him there again. So there's 4 days that he's hung out with the in-laws. What did Ben Franklin say?
3 days, fish and in-laws.
Fish and in-laws stink after 3 days. Guessed, I think it was, but yeah. Okay, so verse 8, on the 5th day, he arose to go early in the morning, and the girl's father said to him, please sustain yourself and wait until afternoon. So both of them ate. Verse 9, when the man arose to go along with his concubine and servant, his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him, look, the day is drawn to a close. Please spend the night. The day is coming to an end. Spend the night here that your heart may be merry. Then tomorrow you can rise early for your journey so that you may go home. So he just, and I can't explain why this is. It's the way it unfolded. So verse 10, but the man was not willing to spend the night. So he arose and departed and came to a place opposite Jebus, that is, Jerusalem. And there were with him a pair of saddled donkeys, and his concubine also was with him, and his servant. So they hit the road, and to get up to Jebus is about 6 miles. Now keep in mind, they're not starting out early in the morning. They're starting out later in the day. Jebus is right here. And so they have walked about 6 miles. It's pretty decent traveling there. You're not crossing rivers or going up and down steep hills or that kind of thing. If you keep an eye out here, you can see the route that follows the ridge right along here. It's this dotted line. They're going to end up at Gibeah. They walk past Jebus and would have viewed it from a distance, probably quarter mile or so, quarter to a half mile, because the city is not right on. The Kidron Valley runs on this side, the Hinnom Valley runs around here, and so the road runs off to the west of the Hinnom Valley. So they wouldn't have walked right under the city wall. They would have seen it from a little ways away. Did I have, while I'm on that, okay, this is from the other direction, so your brain's going to have to switch a little bit. They came from Bethlehem, walked the 6 miles up here. Here you can see Jebus. This is the Temple Mount and the Dome of the Rock today. The old city is right in here. The ancient city is on this little spur, and so they would have walked by within sight of the city as they eventually head up to Gibeah. Okay, one more. There you can see the road going past on the west side of the ancient city of Jebus. Let's see, where do I pick up here? Verse 11. When they were near Jebus, the day was almost gone, and the servant said to his master, "Come on now, let's turn aside here into the city of the Jebusites and spend the night in it." Verse 12, however, his master said to him, "We will not turn aside into the city of foreigners who are not of the sons of Israel, but we will go on as far as Gibeah." Interesting little statement there. If you go back in Joshua and read the conquest account, Jerusalem, Jebus, was a city that was conquered by Joshua and the Israelites, but apparently not inhabited by them. They seem to have conquered it and then moved on, and locals came back in and re-inhabited it, Canaanites. And that remains the case throughout the period of the Judges until the time of David, who, when he becomes king, he rules for 7 years down in Hebron, and then when he wants to unite the nation, he goes up and with Joab conquers the city of Jebus, makes it his capital. But he has to conquer it again because it was not inhabited by Israelites at that time either. Verse 13, well, okay. So they are at dusk, and you can imagine no street lights, no headlights, no flashlights, no campfires along the road to light the way. You can't just keep going. When it gets dark, you got to be in a place to stop. Jerusalem is not that far from Gibeah. The photographer here is standing at Nebi Samuel. This looks like it was taken about in the 60s. And you can see one of the towers on the Mount of Olives here. And the arrow is pointing almost directly at the Dome of the Rock. And you can see Gibeah off to the north. So just a couple of miles further along. It's not that far. I don't know. There's not a whole lot left of Gibeah today. Do you connect Gibeah with the hometown of Saul? You do now? Yeah. And it was not only his hometown, it was also the place where he had his capital while he was king. This is what it looks like today. It's this mound right here. Right in the middle of it today are the concrete remains of a palace that King Hussein of Jordan started to build in the 1960s. To do that, he scraped all the ancient remains off of the top of the site. Fortunately, we have a few pictures. In fact, This is an aerial picture back in 1918. Did they even have airplanes back then? You can see a little structure right here, right under the B of Gibeah. And that is the remnants of a fortress built there by King Saul. Again, you can't go see this today, but it was there until the 1960s. So this is the location to which they aim. Verse 13, the Levite said to his servant, "Come and let us approach one of these places, and we will spend the night at Gibeah or Ramah." Ramah is a little further on. On your handout, you can see Ramah just a little further north than Gibeah. But they don't make it that far. 14, so they passed along and went their way, and the sun set on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. And they turned aside there in order to enter and lodge in Gibeah. When they entered, they sat down in the open square of the city, for no one took them into his house to spend the night. Let's see. So this is a model of a little village, perhaps similar to what was there at Gibeah. You can see there is some fortification wall around this, but part of the fortification is just the backside of houses. So it's not like a giant city with a huge stone wall all the way around. And this is probably what a place like Gibeah would have looked like. They sat down, it says, in the open square. This is the open square in front of the city gate at Dan, and it's a fairly common thing. You can see how it's all nicely cobbled or paved with stones, and then this is the entrance. There would have been a gate, actually an initial set of doors right here, and then through a bent axis system, and you would have gone around this way to get into the city. So someplace like that. Nobody took them into his house to spend the night. This is a foreboding statement. Verse 16, then behold, an old man was coming out of the field from his work at evening. Now the man was from the hill country of Ephraim, and he was staying in Gibeah, but the men of the place were Benjamites. So there's a Benjamite city. Almost everybody that lives there are Benjamites. There's an Ephraimite who was staying there. This is once again the word, I'll call it sojourning. This is not his hometown. We don't know why he was down there, but he's working in the field outside of town, and he's got a house inside the village. So this old Ephraimite is sojourning in Gibeah. This Levite and his servant and his concubine, who are sojourners up in Ephraim, are also sojourning for a night in the town of Gibeah. Verse 17, Judges 19:17, he lifted up his eyes and saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And the old man said, "Where are you going, and where do you come from?" This seems to have been the first actual interaction that he has with anybody. And it's another foreigner in the city, and he asks him, "What's up?" I'll save that just for a moment. Verse 18, he said to him, "We're passing from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote part of the hill country of Ephraim, for I'm from there, and I went to Bethlehem in Judah, but I'm now going to my house, and no man will take me into his home. Yet there is both straw and fodder for our donkeys, and also food and wine for me and your maidservant and the young man who is with your servants. There's no lack of anything. So he describes himself as a traveler, and he comments on the fact, nobody's shown us hospitality. Even though we are not going to be a burden on anybody, we've got our food, we can feed our own donkeys, we came prepared, we don't need anybody's stuff, but it would be nice if somebody would at least give us shelter, let us sleep inside away from the dew and whatever prowls around at night, probably concerned about like cats and stuff. Interesting little statement here. My NAS said he was going to my house. Anybody have something different? The house of the Lord. Yeah. So there's a question here. You can see the versions that have to my house right here, and the versions that have, at least of the ones that I pulled, to the house of Yahweh. The Septuagint, the Greek translation, has ton oikon mu, the house of me, my house. Oikon, oikos is house. So probably the Hebrew text behind that would have been Beiti. Bayit is house, and the E on the end is my house. The Hebrew text, as it stands, has Beit Yahweh, the house of Yahweh. Some of the other versions have that too. Well, you can see English versions are divided on which way to go with that. The house of Yahweh is a little enigmatic. Why would he be heading to the tabernacle? Plus, the tabernacle is never referred to in Judges as, or elsewhere at least, as house of Yahweh. We have the tent of Yahweh, but it's never referred to this way. So it would be a unique occurrence. And some of the folks that go with Beiti, my house, think that it may have originally been written that way, and that somebody, do you see the similarity between Bayit, the three letters, Beit, Yod, Tau, and we have here Beit, Yod, Tau, and then the next letter is Yod, right here, and the initial of Yahweh. It may be that what was written was an abbreviation, or that they thought it might be an abbreviation. I've probably said too much already, but I didn't want to just blow past it and somebody say, hey, that's not what my version says. So guys that are much better at this than me argue about which one it ought to be. I'm not sure that it matters a whole lot, but I wanted to at least mention it. So he's kind of concerned that nobody has shown hospitality. You've all heard stories about hospitality in the Near East, even in the modern day. The Bedouin, you walk into camp, oh, they fall all over you, giving you tea and inviting you for a meal and stay longer. And I mean, that's normal hospitality. He comes into this village at night, and nobody even says boo to him, it sounds like, much less invites him in. I wanted to just throw up a few verses here out of the Mosaic Law, because they should have. Leviticus 19, when a sojourner sojourns, and that's what this guy is identified as here, when a sojourner sojourns with you in your land, you shall not mistreat him. The sojourner who sojourns with you shall be to you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh your God. I don't know how long it's been since you read that verse, but your neighbor Love your neighbor as yourself. Love the sojourner as yourself. These guys clearly are not doing that. Yeah, out of Leviticus 25, now in a case a countryman of yours becomes poor and his means with regard to you falter, then you are to sustain him like a stranger or a sojourner, that he may live with you. Don't mistreat your countryman that becomes poor, but treat him like you would a sojourner and sustain him. So the Israelites were commanded to help sojourners, non-natives, people just traveling through, commanded to help them. One more out of Numbers. If an alien sojourns with you, or one may be among you throughout your generations, and he wishes to make an offering by fire as a soothing aroma to Yahweh, just as you do, so he shall do. As for the assembly, there shall be one statute for you and for the alien who sojourns with you, a perpetual statute throughout your generations. As you are, so shall the alien be before Yahweh. There's to be one law and one ordinance for you and for the alien who sojourns with you. How are you supposed to treat those who are visitors, those who are foreigners in your group? Well, you're not an Israelite. You're a Canaanite. You're a Philistine. You're a Syrian. You're a whatever.
As a native among you.
Just like an Israelite. Yeah. I could pull more of these up, but you get the idea. The Benjamites are not doing this. And in fact, we'll see, not only are they not doing this, they go way off the deep end. That's putting it mildly. Okay.
Is he talking to this, to appeal to this guy from Ephraim? No one's asked us. He's kind of giving him a little bit of the Christianese.
Giving him a little, yeah.
To say,
Well,
I'm a brother.
so, I mean, just put yourself in his shoes.
Yeah.
He walks into this Israelite, Benjamite village, and nobody comes to greet him. Nobody offers him hospitality, anything. And finally, this one old guy, who we find out is himself a sojourner, comes up and asks him. Well, yeah. I mean, you'd almost be tempted to say, what's going on in this town? Nobody's offered us any hospitality. We can pay for our own stuff. We've got our own stuff.
Well, the sun had set and everybody had gone into their homes.
Yeah, but clearly, if there is a city gate, it's open, and they have come in, and we'll find out. We'll find out shortly. Everybody's well aware that he came in the gate, and they know who he's got with him.
Around this today because we got motels
Yeah,
instead of homes where we put people up.
yeah,
We just go get a room at a hotel.
yeah. Just go get a room. Yeah, we're pretty distant from each other here.
We don't show the hospitality.
Yeah. Verse 20, the old man said, "Peace be to you. Only let me take care of all your needs. However, don't spend the night in the open square." So he took him into his house and gave the donkeys fodder, and they washed their feet and ate and drank. I'm curious, what did this old geezer know when he gives this advice? Don't spend the night in the square. Does he have some experience? Has he seen some stuff? Does he know who his neighbors are? It's interesting advice. Now, of course, you could just say, oh, he's being hospitable himself. Don't spend the night here. Come with me. I'll take care of you. It's hard to say.
He's read about Sodom and Gomorrah.
He's read about Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah. And this ends up being worse. Wash their feet. I mean, you can imagine walking along a dusty road for 8-10 miles in sandals or barefoot. So it was a custom back then to wash feet. So let me just think I'm ready to jump to the end here, and we're out of time anyhow. Faith and righteousness are not hereditary. We are only about one generation after Joshua and the elders, the conquest. You know how this story unfolds. How can this be? Didn't this generation inherit some righteousness from the previous generation? And the answer will be clearly not. It's astounding to me how quickly they nosedive into such evil. And I made the point last time that sin can, in fact, be hereditary, passed on easily from generation to generation. It's just become second nature to us. That is not true with faith and righteousness. And this lack of hospitality foreshadows much darker things. You know where this story goes, but this is kind of a harbinger of what's coming. This is not very different from the Sodom and Gomorrah story when the two angels come in and it's Lot that says, hey, come into my house. Nobody else is hospitable to them either. And we just read how the Israelites are commanded to be hospitable and kind to sojourners, treat them with the same respect and kindness and justice that they would grant to their own family or clan. So I would just challenge you to ask yourself that question: am I hospitable? Am I kind to people that I meet? I don't mean you have to have somebody over for lunch every Sunday. That might be a way to do it, but are we different? Obviously, we don't carry out evil acts of the same caliber usually as we see here, rape and murder. What's that?
This guy kind of describes the position we put people in jail.
Yeah, put them in jail. If they do that.
People in jail are.
But I would just challenge you to think: am I different? Am I hospitable? Do I reach out to the people that are around me? Am I quick to assist someone that I see is in need? Do I do things differently than the example that I see here? Fortunately, I mean, if you want to hold up a good example, this other sojourner, this Ephraimite, this old man from the hill country of Ephraim, he is hospitable. So both good and bad example there. Any other comments, questions? Okay. I'll close in a word of prayer then. Lord, thank you for your word. There are things for us to learn even from these really dark chapters. I just pray that you would help us to give thought and consideration to our own activities and the way that we think, the way we treat people around us. New Testament is full of commands for us to be hospitable. We know that you have said sometimes even people entertain angels without knowing it. So I pray that we would be obedient to you in our own hospitality and help us to live a very different life from the things that we read here in this section at the end of Judges. I ask for your blessing on the service to come now. In your name I pray. Amen.